Johnson here.
Carlo here.
Alderman Bekavich is excused. Kafidi here.
Guzikowski here. Burrell here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Welcome to the Civic Center on this cold evening. Item 2 is minutes of the November 22nd, 2016 meeting.
Dickman makes a motion, we approve the minutes of the November 22nd, 2016 meeting.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Carlo, aye.
Kafidi, aye.
Guzikowski, aye. Crow abstains.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Item 3 is significant common council actions. Carry.
Council approved the following: an ordinance rezoning the properties at 9180 South Fifth Avenue and 4240 East Ryan Road from A1 Limited Agricultural and RM1 Multifamily Residential to P1 Park Districts, excluding the LOD Lakefront Overlay District. Also, a resolution approving a certified survey map for the property at 300 West Oakview Parkway, and a resolution approving a certified survey map for the property at 9330 South Nicholson Road. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Which takes us to the public hearing section of the meeting. We have 2 tonight. The first one is 4A. It's a comprehensive plan amendment public hearing on a proposed amendment to the 2020 vision, a comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek that would update the planned land use category in map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned office to planned industrial for the properties at 331 and 401 East Oak Street, tax key numbers as listed. Carrie will read the public hearing notice.
Official notice of public hearing before the Oak Creek Plan Commission. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider an amendment to the 2020 vision, a comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek as it relates to the properties at 331 and 401 East Oak Street. The hearing date is Tuesday, December 13th, 2016 at 6 p.m. at the Oak Creek City Hall, 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin 53154, Common Council Chambers. The proposed amendment would update the planned land use category in map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned office to planned industrial for the properties at 331 and 401 East Oak Street. The Plan Commission may schedule other public meeting items, public hearings for December 13th, 2016 at 6 p.m. This hearing may begin at 6 p.m. or as soon as possible following the conclusion of any other public meeting items and public hearings. Any persons with questions regarding the proposed changes may call the Department of Community Development at 414-766-7027 during regular business hours. Date of notice, November 3rd, 2016, City of Oak Creek Plan Commission. Steve Scafidi, Mayor. This is a public hearing. All those who wish to speak on the proposal for the comprehensive plan amendment are asked to please approach the podium, state your name and address, and speak clearly. This public hearing is now open.
I'll make 3 calls for public comment on item 4A. First call. Second call. Third and final call for public comment on item 4A. Seeing no one coming forward, we will close the public hearing and go to the second public hearing, which is a sign appeal public hearing on a proposed sign appeal for the property at 7978 South Main Street. The tenant address is 330 West Town Square Way. It's submitted by Christina Haase, Gigi's Cupcakes, that would allow opaque vinyl window decals with the Gigi's Cupcakes tenant space, tax key number 813-9050-000. Carrie will now read the public hearing notice into the record.
City of Oak Creek, notice of public hearing before the Plan Commission. A public hearing for a sign appeal will be held on Tuesday, December 13th, 2016 at 6 p.m. The Oak Creek City Hall, Common Council Chambers at 8040 South 6th Street, Oak Creek, Wisconsin 53154. The appellant is Christina Haase of Gigi's Cupcakes. The tax key number is 813-9050-000. The property location is 7978 South Main Street. That's a physical location. The request is a variance from section 17.0334, part of the General Development Plan and Regulating Plan, which states that eye-level signs that include text, graphics, and patterns may not cause more than 10% of the glazing to become opaque. Furthermore, 1 eye-level sign is permitted per 12 linear feet on an entry facade. If granted, the variance would allow the applicant to install 8 opaque vinyl eye-level signs covering the windows on the north-northeast elevation, and 7 windows on the back service door area on the north elevation, which is a non-entry facade of the tenant space located at 330 West Town Square Way. That is the tenant space address. Zoning of the property is DTS MUPDD, Drexel Town Square Mixed Use Development District. All interested persons wishing to be heard are invited to be present. Dated this 23rd day of November 2016. Plan Commission, City of Oak Creek, Mayor Steve Scafidi, Chairman. This is a public hearing. All those wishing to speak on this item are asked to please approach the podium, state your name and address clearly. And this public hearing is now open.
I'll make 3 calls for public public comment on item 4B. First call. Second call. Third and final call for public comment on item 4B. Seeing no one coming forward, I'll close the public hearing. We'll move on to new business and 5A, which is a comprehensive plan amendment. It's considering an amendment to the 2020 vision, a comprehensive plan for the city of Oak Creek that would update the planned land use category in map 2 in the comprehensive plan from planned office to planned industrial for the properties at 331 and 401 East Oak Street, tax key numbers as listed. Gary?
If I could get the graphics to display, please. The request is for the comprehensive plan category and map to be changed from planned office to planned industrial for 2 properties on Oak Street, 331 and 401. They are currently vacant properties. The proposal is to have residential style mini office / warehouse development on the properties that are highlighted in red on the screen. This is a draft of the proposed site plan for the development. The proposal is not to be confused with traditional self-storage facilities. This type of development is residential design in nature and will be sold as individual units as part of a condominium association. So basically, this is having a small office space with a warehouse or storage component to them. They would be owned and they would be part of a condo association. These are some representative images of other developments of its type. The typical use, again, office and warehouse space for small businesses, contractors, and hobbyists. Currently, the properties are called out to be planned office in the comprehensive plan. No M1 uses are considered appropriate in that land use category. And this type of use is a conditional use in the M1 district only. The proposed properties are currently zoned RS2, which is single-family residential. The surrounding properties are a mix of I1 institutional, M1 manufacturing, and various residential. You can see on the map that east and west of the properties, they're zoned RS2 and are vacant. There are 10 properties that are currently zoned RS2 on Oak Street. 2 parcels have a residential dwelling. And across from the properties that are highlighted in red is M1, which is a mix of business and manufacturing. Future land use in this area, according to staff's evaluation, is best suited for a combination of business and manufacturing uses. Although amending the land use map for just 2 parcels is atypical, staff is currently working on updating the city's land use map and will likely recommend changing this area to planned industrial and/or commercial, so it would expand beyond these 2 parcels potentially. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission adopts Resolution 2016-03, amending the comprehensive plan and planned land use map for the properties at 331 and 401 East Oak Street to reflect the change in land use from planned office to planned industrial, following a public hearing and adoption by the Common Council. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. I'll open it up to the commission members for questions or comments. Commissioner Chandler?
Carrie, just a follow-up. So you identify this area will eventually transition to all industrial?
What staff is proposing is that in the future, to match the existing uses and where these properties tend to be trending, would be to change the comprehensive plan to planned industrial. That doesn't necessarily mean that the zoning would change. That would come at a later date.
Thank you.
Carrie, do you see or have any, I know you didn't get too specific in the report, probably by design, but any example of what might be considered an allowed use here in one of these things?
The proposal is to have these condominium units. So in the future, an M1 zoning would be required in order for these to be able to be constructed. Then there would be other considerations, considering it would be a conditional use. There would be, things to consider like buffers, landscaping, hours of operation, fencing. These are going to be residential in design, so they would have more of a neighborhood look to them. So we would be looking at the architectural standards, whether or not they would meet the 75% brick glass, masonry, those kinds of things. In the future, if these were to not be developed, or if other properties in the area would be rezoned to M1, similar uses would be allowed in the area, but that's in the future.
Mr. Dickman.
First of all, I like the concept because I don't think we've seen much of this, have we, Carrie, where it's a condominium type, for businesses, so.
No, this
so
is fairly
something new,
unique.
looks kind of neat. But one concern I do have is that if this gets changed, the area to, say, manufacturing, and we got 2 residential units there, what would happen? Would they just be grandfathered in?
The use would remain until at such time as a proposal would be for redevelopment. So in other words, the residential nature of the properties that are currently developed would not change. Just because it's in the comprehensive plan for future land use to potentially have manufacturing there, that would allow those properties to be rezoned to a manufacturing type use. But again, those existing residential uses will remain until they are rezoned.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Siebert.
Excuse me. I have a question. Do they plan to sell each one of these units, or do they plan to rent them, or combination?
My understanding is that they're going to be sold as condos and that they would be part of a condominium association. So all of the joint uses on the property, the access, the maintenance of the property, those kinds of things would all be taken care of by an association. The only difference is it wouldn't be residential. It would be business.
Thank you.
Anything else from the commission? Sounds like a good use. Motion on 5A.
The Dickman makes a motion, the Plan Commission adopts Resolution 2016-02, amending the comprehensive plan and plan use map for the properties at 331 and 401 East Oak Street to reflect the change in land use from planned office neighborhood business to planned industrial following a public hearing and adoption by the Common Council.
If I can interrupt for just
Second.
one
Go
second,
ahead,
there is
sorry.
a typo. That should be 2016-03, not 02.
Okay, I'll amend my motion then to say 2016-03.
Different seconds.
Siebert, second. Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye. Call aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Good luck on that project. Item 5B is a sign appeal request for the property at 7978 South Main Street. The tenant address is 330 West Town Square Way. It's submitted by Christina Haas, Gigi's Cupcakes, that would allow opaque vinyl window decals with the Gigi's Cupcakes tenant space, tax key number 813-9050.
This is for the Gigi's Cupcakes portion of the Main Street building that is just across from Town Square Way. The Gigi's Cupcake store is now open, if you weren't aware of that.
Delicious cupcakes.
So I'd like to talk you through this exhibit. This is actually showing all of the elevations that Gigi's Cupcakes currently is occupying in that building. Not all of these elevations will be affected by the proposal. The 2 spaces are actually on the north side of the building. It's noted in the report as being north and east, but it's kind of northeast, if you will. So for clarification purposes, none of these opaque vinyl clings are proposed facing Town Square. They are not proposed on the main entrance, which is on that east corner, which is facing Town Square Way. So these are 2 areas that are essentially facing the parking lot. This is on the what's referred to in the report as the east elevation. This is for a back of house office area. They are not proposing to have the window clings in the door area. That's actually part of the tenant space. What's proposed is to have all of the windows shown here for their office space as being covered by these opaque window clings. So on this elevation, it's 8 panes of glass to the right of the door.
Are you counting the 6 on top and then which 8 are you talking about? One, two, three.
It's all of
Oh, I
those
see,
that are
okay.
pointed to by
I
the
got
blue
it.
arrows.
The arrows,
Yep.
yep.
So the total square footage that's proposed to be covered is 52.8, which is 74% of that glazing on that portion there. The total of 71.4 square feet is including that doorway area. So per code, a max of 10% could be opaque. If the Plan Commission were to approve this, again, it would be a 74% coverage. The other area that's being proposed is another back of house operations service store. This is actually underneath a second floor deck, again facing the parking lot. This would screen the interior operations from public view in the parking lot. This has 7 window panes that would be covered, which would be 100% opacity. This is just an idea of what those window clings would look like. It's a little bit difficult to determine from this paper scanned copy, but it essentially is just going to be like a white frosted opaque vinyl cling on the window. So you wouldn't be able to see through it, but light wouldn't be stopped from going through. If granted, the variance would allow the applicant to install opaque vinyl eye-level signs, which are the clings, covering the 7 windows on the north elevation and 8 windows located right of the doorway on the east elevation of the tenant space, which is a non-entry facade. Staff does not provide recommendations on sign appeals. However, variance criteria have been provided on page 2 of the report. Mr. Mayor.
Just a quick question, and I'll hand it off to Commissioner Correll. So this is really, it serves a functional use, not a signage use.
Correct. However, anything that covers the windows completely falls under the category of signs in the DTSMU PDD.
Commissioner Correll.
2 quick points, Mayor. I guess the first being the, looks like a good use place for it to happen. The coverage, how secure is it that it remains intact, that it's not tattered or pulled apart? I mean, if a cling versus a more of a textured product that's put on there? You
The
understand?
applicant is here. Why don't you name and address and just give us a quick rundown on what you're proposing?
The applicant, sorry, Larry Haas, Gigi's Cupcakes, 330 West Town Square Way. The application is actually put on with water. It actually is an adhesive that sticks to the window.
Okay, great.
It actually provides a layer of security as well through the window.
Yeah, I think it's a good use for it, and where it's placed, I don't have any.
You're not installing, you're having a company install, correct?
Correct.
Other questions or comments? Commissioner Siebert?
Is this just the first level that you're talking about, this opaque material?
Yes.
Okay, and just the 2 that have been shown on the screen for us?
That's it. The ones that you showed us are the ones they're going to do.
There's a lot of them, but there
There are a lot of
2
windows, but
spots.
there's only 2 spots facing the parking lot that they're proposing to have these window clings.
In this picture here, Carrie, is
Yes.
this facing, this is the north elevation, so that's not facing Drexel Town. You can have the door covered on this one,
No, this is all facing the parking lot.
but the door would be covered on this one.
On this one, correct.
Okay.
On this one, no. This is actually, if I'm not mistaken, this is actually a public entrance to the cafe.
And to remove those, you said they're applied with water, so if you needed to take them down for one reason or another, it's relatively easy.
Right, there's a release that goes on there that releases the glue and then it takes it out.
Thanks.
Commissioner Crillo?
I personally don't love the idea of these big whiteout areas in the Newtown Center. Question I have for you is why the transoms above? Why not leave those clear to let light in? Why opaque all those out when no one could ever see in there?
From the parking lot, you can still see at the ones on top, you can see into there. And actually, the one that we selected on there actually increases the light coming through. So it actually enhances the light into the backup office area. So when you're looking from the outside, you can see things up
You
on
can
the
see in
top.
those transom windows up there?
Well, you can't,
Like
we have
10
things,
foot.
we have things that are up so you can still see what's up.
Talking about
Above.
interior.
Oh, you can see into,
Yeah, like a bookshelf or
Right.
something.
okay.
And where they're showing right here where the window is, that's really the separation of the doors, the front of house, back of house. So the front of house is everything glass around, and the back of house is what we're trying to cover up. So right behind here would be the office, the safe and all that, and in the
Sure.
back is all the baking equipment.
It just seems like there's an opportunity to maybe put the city logo or something on there so that it's just not big whited out areas. But, I'm sure we couldn't put their logo on it, then that would be additional.
That, it's kind of treated the same way, but having the logo on there without having some kind of opaque background would probably not be enough to cover it completely for their back of house purposes, and we can't regulate content.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dickman?
Back about, a month or month and a half ago, we had kind of like the similar situation with the dental clinic. And I was trying to look at it and say what was different, between the two. And I think the whole thing there was they're facing on the main street, that window, whereas these are facing the parking lot, okay? And I did notice, I think I stopped in there, that the dental lab ended up putting in some kind of blinds in there, and it worked out fine for them. But I think this is, a good use if it's facing the parking lot. Otherwise, I would not agree with it.
I mean, you have a relatively small unit space for your operations, and I understand why you're going to have some private areas where you can do the back office stuff. So I don't really have a lot of heartburn about it. Is the color depictions of these images what it's going to be?
I think it's relatively close, but since they're not up, it's hard to tell. In fact, I believe that what's showing on your screen right now is paper. So it'll be lighter. It'll look a little different. And just to clarify Commissioner Dickman's point, just a clarification that no matter what goes in here, this variance runs with the tenant space. So in the future, if somebody wanted to take down these clings and put something else in there, again, we don't regulate content, they would be able to put something in there.
And just to Dawn's point, I think whatever color you do choose, I think it should be done tastefully within the scope of how the whole business, the whole building looks, which I'm sure you'll do. Any other questions or comments, Commissioner Chandler?
I have a question for the applicant. So when you identified back of house operations, what does that mean exactly?
So the back of the house operation is where we do the baking and the decorating, and we have the office space, and then the front of the house is where the retail would be, where you present the product and sell the product.
Okay, so making the windows opaque, what specifically are you trying to not show
Well,
besides the office? That part I get.
right. Well, you have your office, you have your baking operation, you have all of our product and all of our assembly and everything else in the back.
Okay, thank you.
You don't want to reveal your cupcake secrets.
Secrets.
Could you put blinds there?
They don't want anything that's not washable back in the baking area. So really having this type of a washable coating on there is, and what you're seeing is it's a red rosin paper that's covering it right now, which is not very tasteful. That's why we're waiting to get this on here, and it'll be an enhanced, it's a clear frost, so it's almost like a bright white, and it actually lets the light in and it illuminates it better as it comes into the back of the house.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Dickman and back to Commissioner Correll.
This is more for Kerry. You point out that this particular use here carries forward with the property. So if they were to leave and somebody else comes in, but could they actually then change this and make these signs instead of opaque panels?
I believe that they would be allowed to put in something that would be a substitution. And since we can't regulate content, I would have to err on the side of we would not have any regulatory authority over them putting up something different. In other words, if they wanted to put up an image that covered the entire thing, I do not believe that we would have any authority to say they could not do so.
But if they made it an official sign for their business, would they have to come back here? Because then they would exceed the number of allowable signs for that property?
It's a little bit of a nuanced answer. I'm going to say no with a caveat that I could be wrong.
Okay, so we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Okay.
I'm going to err on the side of caution and say no, though. I'm 60% sure that it would be a no, that we would not be allowed to bring that back.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Correll.
Commissioner Dickman, I feel wiser. I had the same question, and I guess my concern would be, well, I think for this application, it's an excellent use and serves a purpose. For sake of a better example, comic book stores in there, and we've got Superman up and down the door, or whatever it may be. I mean, that's a concern going forward. That's come up. So I guess if we had a better answer as to how stuck we were, it would make it a little easier.
I would say that if approved, this is a variance that would carry forward to anything put in that window. Unless, of course, they decide to put something that is completely different. So in other words, if a neon sign were to appear one day, that would change things. As far as actual signage, text, images, things like that, I believe that's covered in the variance that's before you.
What if the same user wanted to change what's on that, in that space, in that window?
I believe that they would be allowed to, yes.
Well, if that's the case, then we're just granting them the right to do anything they want, essentially.
In this area, on these specific windows.
Tough one.
Commissioner Seaver.
I have a question. Are we going to set a precedence for other buildings at Drexel Town Square if we approve this?
Every variance is an application that's taken on its merit as its own. So in that respect, I would say that it's not precedence setting when you are talking about a variance situation. Whether or not other users consider it that way is something completely different.
I just look at this as that there's a potential that other people are going to then come in and say, hey, look, we've done it over here. We'd like to add it. I know they have to come for a variance, but once you set a precedence, you could create a problem.
There's always that opportunity for people to come forward and ask for a variance for anything from the code.
The power of this commission is that you can act on all those requests.
That's correct.
So you don't have, there's nothing stopping them from coming forward and asking for it.
No.
But let's go back to this case. So what are we, with a affirmative vote, what are we granting them the right to do? If you're telling me that we tell them they can put an opaque covering on the windows, but at any time they could change it after we give them approval, essentially we're just giving them carte blanche to do whatever they want. That doesn't make sense to me. Could the applicant specifically state that they're restricting their request to an opaque covering on the windows?
That is the request, so you could make the specific.
You put a condition on it?
Well, I'm a little hesitant to say yes because I'm concerned that that would be regulating content, and we are not allowed to regulate content when it comes to signage.
Go ahead, Commissioner Correll.
Can we limit it to solid design, opaque, sunblock, throw any type of graphic or signage out of that in any way?
I think the problem is the use of the term signage. And my hesitancy is whether or not the code allows for these types of clings to be considered something other than signage. We are under sign appeal right now. So to me, that points to this being a sign.
Would the applicant suffer any hardship if we held this item to the January meeting?
No. I mean, it's just going to look like it is now. I mean,
I'd rather
they're
have-
basically covered.
I'd rather have clarification on that, so we're not,
Yeah, I think we're going into unknown territory here, I think.
that's cool with you?
Yes.
All right. I would recommend we hold this item for the first Plan Commission meeting in January, if that's okay with you. All right, Carrie, do you need a hold motion? All right, we're good. Thanks. So if you can find that out, that information, so I have a clear understanding of what we're approving. Yep.
Have they got other options too?
All right, moving on to 5C. It's a plan review of site building, landscaping, lighting plan submitted by Jim Marriott Oakview, for a multi-tenant industrial building, a portion of the property at 300 West Oakview Parkway, tax key number 955-1031. Carrie.
This is a request for a roughly 120,000 square foot multi-tenant industrial building. It can accommodate one up to 6 tenants, although none have been identified at this time. There are 28 loading docks shown on the west elevation. Just as a point of clarification, conditional use permits may be required for future tenants depending on what the end user ends up being, the end use. Signage is not shown in these plans. A master sign plan would be required should the building accommodate more than 2 tenants. Parking on this property is shown on the site plan on both the east and west. I apologize that the graphic on the screen is a little bit dark and not clear. There are 22 vehicle parking stalls that are shown on the south, which is south of the building here. There's an additional 70 along the east here. There are 2 areas on this side shown for future parking stalls, totaling an additional 38. Minimum parking requirements for the M1 district are 1 stall per employee on site during the largest shift for manufacturing operations. It's anticipated at this time that a maximum of 120 employees would be on site for any one shift. 120 parking stalls would therefore be required. However, since no tenant leases have been finalized and employee counts are estimated, it is difficult to determine whether or not the proposed parking is adequate. For Section 170404, the Plan Commission has the authority to approve of a modification to the minimum required parking. And since future parking stalls are shown on the plan, should the Plan Commission determine that that number of 38 is sufficient, the applicant would be required to install those parking stalls prior to occupancy based on the total end-user employee counts. There are an additional 11 parking stalls for semi-trailers in the northwest corner, which is shown here. Unfortunately, they don't show up very well on the screen. And 17 are located along the west, which is across from the loading docks. No future trailer parking areas have been identified. This is the build-out of the site. Operations are expected to be between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Hours of operation will likely change based on tenant operational needs. These are draft landscaping plans. I have had some conversations with the landscape architect regarding comments from the city forester. Those are currently being incorporated into a revised design. This does show vegetative screening for the parking areas and around the dumpster enclosure, which is located here in the trailer parking area across from the loading docks. And the staff will continue to work with the applicant's consultant, and as mentioned in the conditions of approval, final approval of landscape plans is recommended by the Director of Community Development. This is just showing an overall layout of the building with the docks and the parking. And these are the proposed elevations for the building. And what I am going to do is actually zoom in on a portion of this so you get an idea of what the exterior will look like from the road, if it'll let me. As I'm doing that, building materials for the proposed building include precast concrete panels in 3 different shades of gray. All proposed windows on the building are shown to be clear insulated glass. There are pre-finished metal canopies with pre-finished metal wrapped columns proposed at the northeast and southeast corners and over 2 central entries on the east. So there's one here and over each of the entries as shown, and then on the corner. Rooftop mechanicals, though not shown, will at least be partially screened by the parapets. As a reminder, all rooftop mechanicals, all ground mechanicals, and all building mechanicals must be screened. Revised plans indicate that pre-finished metal rooftop screens, which would be approximately 5 feet in height, would be installed matching the light concrete wall panel for screening those that are not fully screened by the parapets once the tenants are in place. One dumpster enclosure, again, is located on the west, just across from the loading docks, utilizing the same precast concrete panel wall as the building. There is a proposal to use chain link as the gates, but staff recommends using a more aesthetic and durable material, such as composite or metal, for that gate enclosure. There is no other outdoor storage proposed at this time. Should outdoor storage be proposed for any end-level end-user tenants, that would be required to come back before the Plan Commission. Per code, the staff recommendation is actually that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Jim Marriott Oakview for a portion of the property at 300 West Oakview Parkway, subject to conditions 1 through 10. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. So, future expansion of the Oakview Business Park, pleasant-looking industrial building, manufacturing building, whatever it turns out to be. Lots of landscaping, looks good. No tenants. Not yet. Soon-to-be tenants, good. I like the fact that obviously you put the trucks behind, which makes sense. Questions? Commissioner Sieber.
Stop and go lights, are there any plans for stop and go lights on Elm and Hall Avenue? There's going to be additional traffic coming out, and we add more businesses to that area. I really think that you're going to have to control that intersection.
It's outside of the scope of what we're here to talk about, but, we're always going to look at the traffic counts on all of our major streets, and, if they warrant that, then changes are made. I think the current, alignment and, yeah, it's not our decision, it's not our road. Other questions or comments? Commissioner Johnston.
I can add to that just a little bit. There was a TIA done for this development. It went through the DOT. It was approved for the development, and this design fits into what was laid out for the concept plan for the park, that a traffic signal is not warranted at Elm and Howell.
Answer your question, it's outside our scope?
It does, but I still think we're going to have a problem down the road with.
I don't
truck traffic.
disagree. I come off Elm Road, my garden's down there. I take the right on from Elm to Howell. I get it. Anybody else? Mr. Chandler.
Carrie, do the materials and the amount of windows meet our requirements?
Precast concrete wall panels and windows are part of the accepted materials in the code. It does meet the requirements.
And for the applicant, do you have any of the materials here?
Name and address for the record. Anything else? Other questions? Commissioner Dickman.
Not so much a question, but it says there's going to be 28 loading docks, and I agree with you, Mayor, that they're on the west side, which is good. But because this could be split into 6 tenants, or it could all be 1 tenant, do you put the 28 docks in ahead of time no matter what, or do you wait to see who's going to be coming in?
The intention at this point is not to put all the docks in at once. In the beginning, the footings would be dropped down, so they could be installed. But then as the tenants would take over space, we'd either add or subtract docks. We feel a minimum is 4 per each of the 3 larger areas, so that'd be 12 minimum, 28 maximum.
Okay, I was just looking at all those and looking at what we had last meeting with the truck terminal, and if it was one building, I wouldn't want to see that occurring. So I'm glad to see it, that you would be divided, not that it would be 6, could be 3, 4, whatever you have, but you'll put those in as needed. And then also on the semi-trailer parking, I'm assuming that's going to be paved?
Yes, it would be
areas,
paved.
And there would be none parked on any other area?
Correct, except in the docks, of course.
Yes, right.
Yeah, right.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I think it's a good-looking building myself.
All right. Motion on 5C. A lot of reading attached to that motion.
Farrell moves that the commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Jim Marriott Oakview for a portion of the property at 300 West Oakview Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all building and fire codes are met. 2, that the plans are revised to incorporate a more durable material such as composite or metal for the gate on the dumpster enclosure. 3, that all parking areas are installed in accordance with section 17.0404. 4, that a revised landscaping plan be submitted to the Department of Community Development for approval prior to the submission of building permit applications. 5, that all final plans, site building, etc., are submitted in digital and paper formats for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. 6, that detailed plans for signage are reviewed and approved by the Plan Commission prior to submission of signed permit applications for the multi-tenant building. If the building is revised to accommodate only one tenant with no possibility of future tenants, a sign plan will not be required prior to issuance of sign permits. 7, that all mechanical equipment, ground building, and rooftop are screened from view. 8, that final lighting plans indicating luminaire type, pole type, color, and height are submitted for final approval by the Director of Community Development upon written recommendation of the electrical inspector prior to submission of building permit applications. 9, that stormwater and grading plans are submitted for final approval by the engineering department prior to issuance of permits. And 10, that all water and sewer utility connections are coordinated with the Oak Creek Water and Sewer Utility.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Good luck with your project. All right, moving on to item 5D. It's a sign plan review of a proposed sign plan submitted by Kevin Kwong. Lili Nails for the Lili Nails commercial tenant portion of the building at 7978 South Main Street, tax key number 813-9050. Carrie.
This is a request for one wall sign on the western portion of the tenant space that is highlighted in red on your screen. The request is for one internally illuminated raceway-mounted white channel letter wall sign measuring 17 inches tall by 135 inches wide, which is a total of 16 square feet. Both the location and dimensions are in compliance with the DTSMU PDD General Development Plan and Regulating Plan, as well as the Master Sign Plan for the mixed-use building. No other signs are proposed at this time. All future signs, including any proposed window decals and signs, will require an additional Plan Commission review. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the sign plan submitted by Kevin Keong, Lili Nails for the Lili Nails commercial tenant portion of the property at 7978 South Main Street, with the tenant address is 7964, subject to conditions 1 and 2. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Carrie. Questions or comments on this item? Mr. Chandler?
I just want to confirm you said the signage is compliant.
Signage as proposed is compliant.
Thank you.
Hearing that, motion?
Hickman makes a motion, the Plan Commission approve the sign plan submitted by Kevin Wong, Lila Nails for the Lila Nails commercial tenant portion of the property at 7978 South Main Street. The tenant address for the building is 7964 South Main Street with the following 2 conditions. Number 1, that all revised plans be submitted for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of sign permit applications. And number 2, that a permit application for the sign is submitted to the inspection department.
Seifert seconds.
Roll call.
Hickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Good luck. Item 5E is a conditional use permit request submitted by Arlene Budke, We Energies, and Jerry Frankie, West Park, for a conditional use permit for a We Energies electric substation on a portion of the property at 10861 South Howell Avenue, tax key number 955-1014-000. Carrie.
This is a conditional use permit request for an electrical substation. It's on the southern portion of Oakview Business Park. Utility substations are conditional uses in the M1 zoning district. This is an overall draft grading plan showing the location of the proposed substation, which is here. It's a little bit difficult to read with the grading, but this is a stormwater pond for the development. This is showing an ATC, existing ATC corridor, and access would be located off of Howell Avenue to the east. The zoom-in portion of the property that would be developed with the utility substation, a CSM would be required prior to development and would be forthcoming at a future Plan Commission meeting. Utility substations in the code are required to have a 50-foot setback to property lines as proposed. This would meet those 50-foot setback requirements. Within the plan are a few structures. Some of the things that are included would be a one building and a few towers. This is also, there's a note on here that if a communications pole is required, it would be approximately 50 feet in height. These are just showing the approximate heights of the proposed structures, the tallest one being approximately 75 feet. No employees are anticipated to be staffed at the substation, therefore dedicated parking areas are not required. One power distribution center, which is a prefabricated metal panel with surrounding fencing, will be constructed in conjunction with the transmission line structures and equipment. This is an example of what the optional gate might look like if it were constructed. This would be at the entrance to the proposed access on Howell. This is an example station. You'll notice that there is security fencing around the entire portion of the substation. For section 170502 sub D, security fences are limited to a maximum height of 10 feet. The Plan Commission has the authority to determine opacity. However, per section 170601 sub C, quote, electric power and communication transmission lines are exempt from the height limitations of this chapter. With that in mind, staff recommends that the Plan Commission makes a determination as to maximum height allowed for the security fence to formally address this section of the code that has an exemption for heights of utility structures. The maximum height as determined by the Plan Commission will be incorporated into proposed conditions and restrictions that would be prepared for the next meeting. Barbed wire is also proposed to be used, but is highly discouraged in the city, and staff recommends that the fencing be revised to exclude such use. Again, access is proposed off of Howell Avenue at the existing unpaved ATC access. That will require improvement and WSDOT approval. Staff has informed the applicants that stormwater was included to be detained in Pond 5 of Oakview Business Park, and those plans are currently being drafted. No water or sewer service is required at this time. Lighting via manually operated downward angled LED overhead lights would be on only during servicing of the property, which, according to the applicants, routine maintenance is to occur approximately once a month between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. Motion sensor lights above the entry doors on the proposed control house building would also be installed. The close-up example of the station and gate and sign. So this would be the entrance to the actual station itself. You'll notice that the chain link is a little bit different. It's more of a mesh fence that provides a little bit more opacity. And this is an example power distribution center. So this is the building that would be proposed that would have the exterior motion sensor lights. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission recommends that the Common Council approves a conditional use permit for a We Energy substation on a portion of the property at 10861 South Howell Avenue after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Commission's review at the next meeting, which is January 10th, 2017.
Thanks, Carrie. For the applicant, is there a standard that you have for these fences, fence types? All right, name and address for the record, please.
James Kelmo, We Energies. Excuse me, a little hoarse. Yes, it's absolutely the standard fence that we put in virtually all of our substations. There is an error in the text of the application. I believe we call it 14 feet. It's actually only 8 foot 6 inches in total. That's including the barbed wire on the top. It's actually...
Didn't mean to interrupt you, but is barbed wire your standard at the top of all those areas?
Absolutely. There's extremely high voltage inside the substation, so it's a public safety concern. Every station has it. And this is the exact same fence we just built at our branch substation on 6th and Rawson, right across from UPS.
Okay.
So it's the exact same standard fence we put in every substation. It's an industry and our standard.
How visible is this from the road?
We would be set back, as the drawing showed, as far as we can.
Pretty far back.
Against the pond. And Wispark, the developer, does plan on retaining and selling that entire front property, so there very well would eventually be something built in front of us. So we would be, stashed away back there. We would do whatever landscaping would be required. We provided a few samples. Typically, we don't totally screen it because you'd like to see if any unauthorized entry is going on back there, but we would have some space, trees, and brush to screen it from the public.
So for our purposes, we would be asking for an 8 foot 6 inch fence and that includes the barbed wire?
That includes the barbed wire.
That's the
correct?
standard you use at your other facilities in Oak Creek.
Correct.
And it's not really part of what we're talking about. What's the reason for the substation request? Why is it necessary now?
Currently, this whole area is served from that same branch substation way over on Rawson and 6th Street, or Pennsylvania substation on far to the east. So with all the development in the area, that's about 5 miles from branch substation. We have load growth concerns and low voltage concerns. The longer the run you have to your customers, the lower the voltage gets. So with all the, between IKEA, Drexel Town Square, and there are a few other customers indicating they have further load growth right nearby. So
Progress. Okay. Questions? Mr. Dickman?
From a security standpoint, two things. Are there some cameras or something that are monitored at some remote location? That's one item. And then you said you had motion sensing lights. That's fine that the light goes off, but is there something that shows at some other location that, hey, the light went on, there's something going on there? Or?
yes, if you have the picture of our control house, the sample picture. If you look just to the left of the door, the upper left corner of that picture, there's also motion sensing cameras. So the lights come on, the cameras come on, and that's all monitored downtown at our central security. So they get an alarm and can see what's happening.
Especially in these times, now, who knows what can happen?
Right.
Mr. Siepert?
I have a question about distribution of the power out of this substation. Is it underground, above ground?
Yeah, the distribution, one of the reasons the site is almost ideal is we're building it right abutting the ATC right away. Our distribution will actually be underground south to Howell and north to 13th Street, right in their existing right away, the transmission right away.
So there'll be no utility poles in the area?
No, the only structures will be in the station where we have to tap off the transmission lines.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Johnson?
My biggest concern is with the driveway along here. It does cross over our pathway that ties into the Oak Leaf Trail there. It is the location for the ATC line now. This will be a gravel access path all the way back to the substation, which currently there is no pathway back there. It's the old farm entrance that's there now.
Right.
I guess it's Jerry Frankie, West Park, 301 West Wisconsin Avenue, Milwaukee. Brian, at some point, there's going to be a user on this property that generates a lot more traffic than the maintenance of a substation. We are trying to maintain maximum flexibility in the location of that driveway. We Energies has agreed that they will relocate it based upon what the ultimate user of that property needs. In my highest and best opinion of what could happen there is I would love to see a data center developed here because of its proximity to the high voltage ATC transmission line and this substation and the Root River where you could do some green cooling. I would love to see a data center go here because you could really get high property tax values, low employment, low traffic generation. But there is going to be traffic on this site someday and it'll go across the bike path.
So to Brian's question, you're just being forward thinking about future use of the.
Well, you have to have access, and it's got to cross the bike path someplace. So, but again, I think that the amount of traffic associated with maintaining a substation is really minimal.
What's the bike path made? Is that
Asphalt.
blacktop?
It's an asphalt.
It must be very heavy duty too, because I've seen We Energies boom trucks on that, and I've stopped and asked them, really? So.
Yeah. Currently now, there really is not a gravel access even in this location coming off Howell Avenue. It just opens up a door, somebody driving back, and that's where the gate comes in as a possible option.
Yep.
To put the gate back behind the pathway.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Motion.
Crowell moves that the commission recommends that the common council approves a conditional use permit for a We Energy substation on a portion of the property at 10861 South Howell Avenue after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the commission's review at the next meeting.
Seifert seconds.
I think I heard Seipert. Before we go to the roll call, Mike, any concerns? Fire? No? Okay, thanks. Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
All right, I lost my agenda somewhere. So item 5EF, there we go. 5F is a sign plan review submitted by Paul Bouchard, Mode, Oak Creek LLC, for the Mode commercial tenant portion of the building at 7979 South Main Street, tax key number 813-9053-000.
This is a proposal for both wall and flag signs at the tenant space on the property highlighted in red on your screen. This is the east elevation of the Mode tenant space. There will be 2 internally illuminated raceway-mounted channel letter wall signs over the entries on the east and west. Again, this is the east. This is the only elevation that will have the small flag sign that's also shown on this graphic. You'll notice that there is a tagline below the main logo. Sorry, this is the west elevation, so this is showing the entrance from the parking lot. Same sign. The tagline will have push-through letters, so those will be internally illuminated and they'll be routed PVC on a non-illuminated black aluminum panel. So this is not a cabinet sign, but it is another portion of the wall sign itself. The entire logo with the tagline will be 25 inches tall by 61.61 inches wide, which is a total of 10.7 square feet. Both wall signs are the same dimensions and meet the requirements of the DTS MUPDD and Master Sign Program for the building. This is another graphic showing that proposed blade sign. It's non-illuminated, it's double-sided. Aluminum blade sign just on the east elevation corner. It's 24 inches by 15 inches. The location and size are both compliant. Just as a note, blade signs must be mounted at least 8 feet from grade, and this requirement should be included on the plans when submitted for the permanent application. No other signs are proposed at this time. All future signs, including any proposed window decals or signage, will require additional Plan Commission review. Staff's recommendation is that the Plan Commission approves the sign plan submitted by Paul Bouchard of Mode Oak Creek LLC for the Mode commercial tenant portion of the property at 7979 South Main Street. The tenant address is 7965, subject to conditions 1 and 2. Mr. Mayor.
Questions on the sign request? Mr. Dickman.
This is more for Kerry. You know that at the end there that there's a requirement they be mounted at least 8 foot from grade. Should we have a condition indicating that, or do you think we're covered already with the 2 conditions you have?
It's a requirement in the code itself. It doesn't necessarily need to be as part of the approval. It just needs to be noted on the plan so that everybody is aware of it.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Motion.
Dickman makes a motion, the Plan Commission approve the sign plan submitted by Paul Bouchard, Modi Oak Creek LLC for the Modi commercial tenant portion of the property at 7979 South Main Street. The tenant address for this business is 7965 South Main Street with the following 2 conditions. Number 1, that all revised plans be submitted for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of sign permit applications. Number 2, that a permit application for the sign is submitted to the inspection department.
Guzekowski, aye.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Speedy, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Are you the applicant? Welcome to Oak Creek. When are you going to be open? When are you going to be open? All right. Okay. Well, I know it's a store location that people have been asking about, so look forward to that happening. With that being said, we are officially out of items, which means we can make a motion to adjourn.
Grillo moves to adjourn at 6:59.
Crowell seconds.
Roll call.
Dickman, aye.
Johnston, aye.
Grillo, aye.
Speedy, absolutely.
Guzekowski, aye.
Crowell, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Have a wonderful night. Stay warm. We'll see you next week.